to my introduction. Thank you for that. I have two hats. So I'm currently seconded from BIM Object to UK Government. So I head up digital construction on behalf of the Cabinet Office in UK Government. We report to the Cabinet Office and Treasury in a directorate called the Infrastructure and Projects Authority. First of all, I'd just like to say a huge thank you for the invite today. First time in Ireland, yeah, it's good to be here. So I'm going to mainly talk about kind of UK context and kind of where we are on that journey in terms of transforming infrastructure performance, and hopefully share some lessons learned in terms of our journey from a BIM perspective, but also some of where we're going to go. I will talk a little bit about what BIM Object do in a sort of short case study as an example of how these technologies might be applied as a client or main contractor or main consultant in the construction delivery. So the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, we have a role at the centre of government to support all government departments to deliver projects better. Now that's not just construction and infrastructure. That's anything from building a nuclear submarine to universal tax credits to all sorts of types of projects from a transformation, digital, infrastructure and defence perspective. But in infrastructure and construction, we have a significant role to play as a government. We are the largest client in the UK, and I think that's reflected in Ireland as well. So whilst I'm going to give you a sort of a UK context and quite naive to the Irish issues, I will try and reflect on some of your National BIM Council strategy for digital transition as well. A couple of years ago, McKinsey did a report that recognised an opportunity for growth in the UK, which said that we're essentially missing out on about £15 billion worth of productivity each year in infrastructure and construction. I don't think £15 billion would probably buy you a third runway at Heathrow just about, and a number of other massive projects. It would also buy you a significant number of schools that I can't calculate in my head right here and now. That is a huge productivity inefficiency that remains in our sector. Construction and infrastructure is probably the last major sector in the economy yet to have industrialised. And this is where the productivity gap is widening currently. So building information modelling and the UK government's mandate in 2016 and projected in 2011 within the first government construction strategy in the UK was an indication that enough is enough. From a productivity perspective, we need to drive this industry forward and change some of the cultures and behaviours that have become the norm. So one of the examples a colleague of mine would always use is that if you put a builder who built a pyramid on a construction site today, they'd probably recognise about 50% of all the trades and things going on. If you put them in a factory where they build cars, they would think they're on a different planet. We are still doing the same things we've been doing for thousands of years, using the same methods, and we need to industrialise what we're doing, because the opportunity for growth is clear. So whilst I'm hitting the industry over the head slightly with a large hammer, the UK performs reasonably well compared to its international peers. We're reasonably good by comparison in this sector, and I suspect Ireland are probably in a similar quadrant given the technology availability and the skills availability. Listening to Danny there was really insightful in terms of taking an economics kind of view, because from a government perspective, this is the view they're taking. This is how they are looking to balance the economy. This is how they are looking to promote the capability and actually use this as an opportunity to not just digitalise but transform a sector so it becomes valuable as an export as well. So what are we doing? In the autumn last year, we started to take the next step on our journey. So if I was to take a lessons learned from the UK BIM mandate of 2016, is that on April 4th, 2016, the balloons came down, the streamers and the fireworks went off, and the next day was exactly the same as the day before. We set out this mandate, which was fantastic and insightful and has had a catalytic effect on the industry, there's no doubt, and the technology sector's engagement with this market. Yet, it wasn't as clear a connected plan to why we are doing this and what do we value as a UK. What do we value in regards to our productivity and growth and our other strategies from an industrial perspective? And how do we want to create the best possible spaces where people live, work, commute, etc.? So we took the next step on that journey, and in the autumn, our UK budget announced moving to a presumption in favour of off-site manufacturing. Now, does that mean a return to prefab and modular builds? Absolutely not. We are very much focused on manufacturing processes. This is a language issue, which we'll come back to a little bit later. Okay? We're looking at taking learnings from other sectors and actually bringing that into the construction and infrastructure sector. BIM Level 2 was the first sort of step on that journey through standardisation, and this is the next step that we're taking. This was supported by a document that we produced in the Infrastructure and Projects Authority called Transforming Infrastructure Performance, which is what I'm going to talk about today. From the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which is our sort of outward-facing department to industry, we produced our industrial strategy. And we also produced the Transport Infrastructure Efficiency Strategy. Now, there's more pages in there to read than, than there is bedtimes, I suspect. So it's not for everyone. And it doesn't reach the 99% of people that don't read policy documents. However, the first time in my career in this sector, I recognised that these were connected, coherent strategies, all talking to each other. So we're going from strategy and policy now into delivery, and how do we kind of effect that market shift so we have a sustainable sector for the future? So first of all, just quick on the industrial strategy. So the things that we are focusing on are innovation, people, so do we have the skills to deliver what we're saying? Infrastructure, do we have the supporting things in place? That's not just physical infrastructure, that's digital infrastructure as well. From a place perspective, how do we rebalance the investment in the UK, not necessarily away from the southeast, but recognising the value other parts of the country has? And reflecting with Alan last evening, there's a concentration, I believe, in and around Dublin in regards to investment that isn't necessarily felt in other parts of the country. So how do you use digital and technology and the lever of construction and infrastructure to support other parts of the Irish economy as well as the UK economy to serve the hotter markets and not restrain that pace, but support it effectively so that the wealth is distributed effectively? And there's also the business environment. So how do we take those technologies and start to commercialise them? And what role does government play in driving that ambition? So within the industrial strategy, we created a new sector deal. It's the first time we've had a sector deal with the construction industry. This was focused on procuring for value, industry-led innovation, which is digital manufacturing and whole-life performance, skills for the future, and exports and international. This is very much related on how we would like to kind of take the construction and infrastructure industry forward as well. We see a huge opportunity off the back of BIM Level 2, where we are starting to export our support services around the globe in different countries. And we see manufacturing as an opportunity to add the next layer to that in construction. We've also created an Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund for clean growth. And within that, there's something called Transforming Construction. So it's up to £170 million worth of essentially pump priming from government to encourage the digital and manufacturing technologies to proliferate. There is no one stopping any Irish company joining up and partnering with some of the programs in the UK around that Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. There is no barrier to entry in that sense. So if you do have offices and locations in the UK or partners that you work with, perhaps it might be a question as one takeaway from today, how are they getting involved in terms of this industrialisation process in the UK? So anyway, transforming infrastructure performance. The broader vision for what I will now call TIP, as it's been affectionately known, we're looking at significantly improving the way in which infrastructure is planned, procured and delivered to focus on whole life performance. Through the government construction strategy, we have saved somewhere between 12 and 20% in regards to capital costs, and that was a suite of measures, including BIM level 2, that helped to save that through the capital spending departments. Yet, we've not necessarily produced the highest performing pieces of infrastructure. We've not necessarily produced infrastructure that, in operation, doesn't cost us a significant amount more. And whilst this is a very kind of hard challenge to address, we're taking a 10-year view through TIP to establish the baselines, the benchmarks, the procurement models, how we align and integrate different departments, and how we use smarter technology and manufacturing adoption to actually encourage a whole life performance view on the delivery of construction and infrastructure. But as I said, right now, we're starting to cross the valley of death. All the policy people have written their documents and are very delighted. They've patted themselves on the back and they've walked out the door. And the delivery people are now left holding something that they're trying to enact. This is a hugely complicated matter that we're trying to address, but we're not afraid of addressing it, actually, because the construction and infrastructure market is too significant and too important to any economy to ignore. And we do feel that if we can stay at the forefront of this, and BIM Level 2 is the catalyst for that change, then we've got a great opportunity to share and engage overseas in the future through construction and infrastructure. So parking the Brexit question in the room, this is an opportunity to engage with many different countries in a very different way around construction and infrastructure. We have a significant professional services industry in the UK that is exported around the globe. Our constructors and our manufacturers don't necessarily follow us when we go there. So we have great responsibility and opportunities from a professional services perspective, but it's very difficult for construction firms and manufacturers to join us on that journey as well. So we need to create an environment to cross that valley of death that allows us to take the steps we need to do in the short term, build the capability in the clients across government departments in the UK, and support the standards, education, the technology requirements, and essentially the cultural aspects of this and the commercial models to create the right environment for us to exploit this in the future. And why would we need to do that? Construction is about 6 to 8% of our GDP. I don't know what the Irish figure is, but I suspect it's somewhere in a similar order. From a workforce perspective, it's somewhere between 8 to 10% of the UK workforce, so it's a significant employer, and I'd imagine that's probably fairly consistent in the Irish market as well. But we've identified a £600 billion pipeline of work just as a government, either through our direct investment or investment into energy projects and private initiatives in the utilities market over the next 10 years, so up to 26, 27. So that gives you a feel of kind of how significant our pipeline is and the investment. But if we carry on delivering traditionally the same way, a number of things will happen. One, we won't have enough skills in the marketplace to deliver that £600 billion pipeline in the time frame required. So there is a significant shortage of engineering and design capability, there's a significant shortage of labour if you're delivering traditionally to that marketplace. So for £60 billion a year, essentially over the next 10 years, we need to understand what do we value and what do we want out of that spend. So it's not just about, procuring the same way we always have, expecting the supply chain to respond in a sort of post-Brexit environment where access to labour might be constrained in a different way. So we're using the lever of digital and manufacturing to address a number of issues here, not just productivity and growth, but also governance, risk and resilience to those issues. We're looking at manufacturing as an opportunity to serve overheated areas of the country from locations which require further investment and support. So this is a part of a rebalancing of the economy in terms of construction and infrastructure that we're looking at as well. So it's not just about can we do it faster and cheaper. This is about can we get the best quality product to the right location at the right time to serve our customer, which is the taxpayers of the UK. So in terms of what do we want for our investment, as an IPA or Infrastructure and Projects Authority, we're very much at that top level, at the system level. We're looking at metrics around labour productivity, which I think Danny reflected on earlier. We're looking at rebalancing the economy. We are looking at apprentices, SMEs, a number of different policy agendas. And we're considering our benchmarking approach and how we kind of take this forward in those four broad categories. So I'll give you an example. The housing ministry here would be a network level contributor. They have a portfolio of programs and projects which eventually become assets in that life cycle. And they will have a number of metrics themselves which they have to meet. So in the UK, the housing expectation is to deliver 1.5 million homes in the next 4 to 5 years. That would be 500,000 more homes than the market's likely to create if we stand still and do exactly the same things from a traditional perspective. But using digital and manufacturing technologies, we're looking at how do we use moving to a presumption in favour of off-site as a lever for change to start to accelerate housing and accelerate the support we can provide to those people that are struggling to get on the housing ladder. It's a significant issue in the UK as it is in Ireland. The higher cost, particularly in the London area and the southeast, makes it prohibitive to many people to live and work in those areas. And the knock-on impact of that from an economic and social perspective could be anything from less productivity, which has a financial impact, to health and well-being. And in an industry in the UK where 10% of all our suicides in the UK come from the construction sector, and 75% of the suicides in the UK are men, well-being is quite an important issue, actually. And if we can help people to live and work in stable jobs, stable locations, with some longevity, then that is another factor that puts a positive spin on how we deliver a digital and manufacturing agenda. So again, it's not just about the productivity aspect. This has a significant number of other opportunities to give people stable environments to work in. We put people in very harsh environments, particularly in infrastructure, in odd locations, away from people's families, putting them up for 2 or 3 nights in caravans in the middle of nowhere, and expecting them to deliver a job in difficult conditions without really addressing the options and the opportunities that are available to us. And this is about addressing those opportunities. So, within our TIP programme, we have something called Smarter Infrastructure. I lead this for our Infrastructure and Projects Authority. This is focused on not just digital and manufacturing, but also knowledge management. There are some fantastic things that go on out there in industry that are known, yet we fail to deliver these consistently across the piece. So how do we actually bring these technologies to bear and strategically move forward as departments, as government, as industry, and make these things the norm? And hopefully this digital transition roadmap is a part of making digital the norm within the Irish construction sector. So let's discuss There are a number of different components to our manufacturing approach, but we're aiming for that top right-hand corner. We recognise that whilst volumetric or modular construction is one approach, componentisation is another approach to off-site construction. We're actually looking at manufacturing processes and how do we bring the most effective production system to delivering our construction and infrastructure that ultimately provides the best service to our customers. To do that, those technical things that need to be established are quite well known. Actually, we understand what we need to do from a technical perspective. We just got to get on and do it. From a commercial perspective, we don't necessarily have all the answers today. So I put this graphic up on the screen. So this is not policy. You won't find this in any documents. This is my interpretation of life from a procurement perspective. But today, we're somewhere between design and build and integrated project delivery. The reason it's the shape of a boomerang is that actually, if we move to a more standardised and mass customisable approach to repeatable construction, then we won't just be procuring people and services to collaborate with from an integrated project delivery perspective. We will also be portfolio and programme level transacting with the manufacturing supply chain to procure the things that we do know we want. So I was saying to someone earlier, if we've built schools for I don't know how long as a government, so you would think we would know what we want. We have standard designs, yet every single time we procure a new design, we defer the risk, we expect the supply chain to create something that is aesthetically pleasing within a cost envelope without having used any of the repeatable aspects of what we know is exactly a standard space. So from a classroom perspective, we know our classrooms, and this is a current discussion ongoing in the Department for Education, our current specification says a classroom should be 55 to 57 square metres, and we're saying if we move to a standardised approach, the optimum space for you will be 62.5 square metres. And we will deliver that for significantly less, significantly faster, and significantly higher quality. However, culturally, that's not the way we've always done things. So it's quite a difficult thing for lots of people to understand and to accept. So there's quite a lot of stuff to kind of go on here in terms of the cultural barriers and the commercial challenges to change. So one of the cultural challenges is taxonomy. We've got to speak with the same language. We're talking modern methods of construction, manufacturing, modular, off-site. And we've got a number of skills challenges and risk challenges to address. But the two things that are different now to what they were is digital and consumer behaviour. Everything now is on demand, and everything else in my life is digital. So why not construction and infrastructure? So the three challenges ahead of us: productivity and growth, transparency and accountability. Digital makes things more transparent and more accountable. But security and resilience. We must be more secure with our data as well. And we must consider resilience when we're planning for construction and infrastructure, whether that's global warming or other aspects of the environment. And digital gives us that opportunity to flexibly rearrange spaces through BIM, through other technologies, to provide options and the best value for money. So what does this mean to you? I picked this up out of the transition roadmap, and I think this is a super ambitious plan, and I think it's a great plan, and I would really encourage everyone in the room to get on that journey as soon as possible, if you're not already. 20% reduction in CapEx cost is great. In the UK, we did that through the government construction strategy. But I would urge you to kind of think about whole life performance as well at the same time. Stand on the shoulders of others who are going in that direction and take that opportunity. Reduction in delivery program, this is absolutely possible through this approach from a manufacturing and digital perspective as well. And in terms of increasing exports, there's a significant opportunity to engage with not just the UK in a post-Brexit world, but globe through digital. So in summary, Construction's moving from a goods-based sector in a very transactional environment to a service-based sector. Technology and information will enable us to mass customize construction. So for the repeatable things we buy, the vision will be, we will be buying construction and infrastructure as a public sector like we buy cars or kitchens off the internet today. This is already happening. The shoots are out there. It's particularly in the housing market in the UK. The technology is live, it's real, it's happening. We have to consider what that means for our own roles. We have to consider how we would engage with that. We have to consider how we prosper from that. And we want to get the talent that's in the industry focusing on what's important and delivers value for money. To export to the UK in this market, it needs to be digital. From a BIM object perspective, to be able to represent your products, your ideas, your designs, and be able to communicate that into international markets, to be able to share that before having to invest in physical infrastructure, tangible things, as we heard from Danny earlier, in that market. To understand, do you have a pipeline? Do you have something sustainable to step into that market? Digital is a fantastic way to reach out to the globe. We are in a global economy, not just a national economy. And if we get this right, the possibilities and the benefits for change are significant. BIM Level 2, through standardisation and moving to digital, is the first step into a significantly more effective and productive industry that delivers the service and whole life performance that our taxpayers demand. Thank you.